So you say from Blumberg. So tell us, how was it coming up out there? You know, Blumberg's coming up.
Well, in North Philly, 23rd and Jefferson,
to be exact,
and 23rd and Oxford,
yeah,
the whole perimeter. You know, it was a whole lot of violence. You know what I mean? A whole lot of negativity, but it was also a lot of positive stuff. You know what I mean? A lot of love. Back then, you know, people had integrity then.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And back then, you know, those old, you know, things that our parents grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
These are the principles and morals and values that was instilled in me.
Yeah.
As a child. You know what I mean? Even though my father was incarcerated for long since the time, you know, still I lived in a one-parent family, you know, home where my mom took care of me and my two sisters. So at some
out
point,
to the mothers,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and you know she's a rider. You know what I mean? Till this day, she's 74 years old, and you can't tell her that. You know, she's young. she has a good spirit. You know what I mean? And she kept me motivated all those years. You know what I mean?
Speak on it.
Encouraging words. You know, telling me, you know, to have a strong will. You know what I mean? When I found this slime, that was very therapeutic for me. But not to get off the topic, you know, growing up in Blumberg, you know, a lot of things that I learned, you know, a lot of things that was instilled in me made me the man that I am today.
Solid.
Right, because going through 36 and a half years of incarceration, not coming from a tough environment, you know what I mean, and then going into the lion's den, you know what I mean, you know, there wasn't no time to be soft, you know what I mean. That's when men was men. When I came back, when I came through the first time, you know what I mean, you know, that was my only time coming through.
All right, so question before you go ahead. So you was raised in Blumberg's projects.
Absolutely.
So how was it back then compared to now?
Well, back then, you know, it was different levels then in terms of the code of ethics that dudes was doing in, you know, in the buildings. We all did our dirt. But it was a certain code of ethics that we had. If we seen you on the avenue with your mother or some children, you got a pass then.
Let them know.
Fast forward now, you know, the compounded ignorance that you see in a lot of misguided youth, that only come from the household that they was raised in. I'm talking about the younger generation, not to discredit any younger mothers. But in this day and time, a lot of young mothers want to be their daughters or their sons' best friend. It don't work like that. And I was sent to Greater Ford, got my number. I had an AM number. Then I was sent to Camp Hill. Back during that time, man, I was, you know, I wasn't hopeless. I had hope that I would get a life sentence back, but the oppression that I was faced with the DOC at that time, being young, you know what I mean? I stayed in and out of the hole, so I vented my frustration out on those authorities.
So what was some of your struggles that got you sent to the hole?
Well,
being a young youth.
Well, being a hothead. You know what I mean? Having a quick temper.
Because we jumping too quick into the, you know what I'm saying? So,
look, I just want to say, like, just the beginning. Like, from somebody, like you said, not coming from those environments, to get thrown in the den with the wolves, and saying, like, that initial feeling, like, in the beginning, like, you about to be in this jungle. Like, how'd you feel? You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I didn't, you know, I had some concerns, right? Because of the stories I used to hear. Right. But coming up, being young, being 13, 14, I was hanging out with dudes in their 20s. You know what I mean? So I was tested on the street. You know what I mean? Whether it came through gunplay or through the hands. Right. I was tested. You know what I mean? So going into that environment, you know what I mean, it was a change of pace for me, you know what I mean? But I never had to worry about looking over my shoulders. You know what I mean? I had the opportunity to be cellies with my father. You know what I mean?
Wow.
After not seeing him
That's crazy.
so many years. So when
Speak
you
on
hear
that.
Oskino mention that in his,
So
that's a true story.
So how was that? Like did you know your pop was gonna be a celly, or you just found it out when
No,
you
I
walked in?
mean it was designed that way. Once he found out I was convicted, he went right to the administration, and I was let out of the hole at the age of 17. You supposed to be 18, considered an adult, in order to go off into population.
Right.
So I went out a little early. You know what I mean? And I tested the waters, and at that particular time I felt as though I had to uphold my prestige, my name. Sure. So I felt at that point in my immaturity, I felt as though I had to prove myself. So this is what triggered me when a dude came sideways. It was only one way for me to handle that, and that's what I was brought up on.
Sure.
I had to get out of that because that was pride.
So question. So before you got sent upstate, because we done jumped straight to the top. We didn't even get to the whole the story of how you was raised or whatnot. But before you got sent upstate, was this your first case, or have you ever been locked up before?
I've never been locked up for nothing.
So this is your first
experience. So that was your first offense, and they hit you with that joke.
They certified me as an adult.
Wow.
And back during that time, you have to remember, back in 1981, you had guys like Mumia Abu-Jamal, guys like that, a lot of political figures in the city. So a lot of those cases were political. And just so happened, the deceased was Asian. You know what I mean? So they made it political. You know what I mean? And it was like a railroad type of thing. Because even, with all the facts laid out, they just going off of, the self-incriminating statement that I made, that I robbed a man. See what I'm saying? Not knowing my rights, you know what I mean? But as years went on, I started studying law and started finding loopholes in my case. You know what I mean? Fast forward up until, the Miller decision, Miller versus Alabama. You know what I mean? The landmark case that have me sitting here right now before y'all. I was still rumbling in the federal courts before that was even decided. So as far as losing hope, no. I mean, even though I went to the whole back and forth, academically I was still sharp because I knew how to run past the basketball court after a certain point in time and go right to the law library. You know what I mean?
So I have a question too. I want to touch back on how did it feel once you found out you were going to be cellmates with your father? Since you said you missed some time from him, being in jail, did it almost feel like you kind of getting your childhood back with being with your father?
Well, more so that manly figure. I was missing that. You know what I mean? I was getting a lot of my strength from him, man. I was used to emulate him, man. He was a dressing dude. He kept money in his pocket, so I wanted to be like my father. Him not being, in my presence all those years, me finally seeing him, it was surreal to me. I ain't have no regrets or nothing like that. I didn't look down on him for not being there. I looked at his circumstances. You know what I mean? And just like I looked at my circumstances, I didn't see the cause and effect. You know what I mean? But that's the price you pay when you get involved in stuff coming from an environment. Even with the environment that I came from, I still did things that were conducive prior to leaving. You know what I mean? People in my neighborhood, they speak very highly of me. You know what I mean? Because of character.
So, question, your father, was your father heavy in the streets as a child, watching him?
Yeah. He was involved in the black mafia, so it was like seeing that, it was like, he gone, man, so I'm trying to emulate him, man. I want to be like him, not knowing that I'm going to run into a brick wall.
Just being young.
Because, just being immature and being misguided. That's with any team, right? But fast forward to the mindset of the day is totally different.
So your pop, what age did he get incarcerated? What age did you witness your father get incarcerated?
My father actually did like 2 different bids, man. He did a bid back in the 70s. They had this prison called Eastern State Penitentiary.
Somebody want on Fairmount?
Absolutely.
Oh man, legendary John right there.
Yeah, I remember as a child, my mom taking me to go see him. You know what I mean? But at some point, she didn't want me to be exposed to that type of environment because a lot of times, that can be very traumatic.
Psychological.
For a young boy coming up.
Because you being young, you don't fully understand the situation. You just see it, so you just kind of interpret it for what it is right there. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because you said that made you more comfortable going to the prisons, being young to see your father, actually going inside?
I wasn't comfortable at all. Right, my antenna stayed up. My sense of comfort came from me being able to bond with him, whether he was my cellie or not. Just being able to get the quality time, to learn some things about him. You know what I mean? For the years that he missed in my life, without looking at why you wasn't there, none of that. This is the opportunity.
How long was your father your cellmate for?
For about 7 months, and then he went out to the trailers and went home.
Well, that's good. That's a good job. So how did you feel when your father left? When you knew he was going home? How did you feel?
I felt good. You know what I mean? To know that he had his freedom back. Something that I was so passionate about ascertaining myself. You know what I mean? All that did was give me more drive because he paid for my lawyer. He paid for my first lawyer.
Major.
You know what I mean?
Major.
So, it ain't like he shirked his responsibilities all around as a father. It's just that circumstances, man, And like I said, I don't hold that against him. You know what I mean? Because he gave me a whole lot of jewels. You know what I mean? He taught me a little bit about how to learn law. You know what I mean? So the things that he wasn't able to instill in me when I was home, he had that opportunity.
Good job.
And I cherish that.
So you did 36 years?
36 and a half. Straight.
And you was not even expecting to come home.
Well, at that point in time, man, a mandatory life sentence meant that, just that. Till you die, right? And I used to always wonder how all these, guys that practice law, always going to the law library, they, I keep seeing them getting all this mail from the courts. So one day I asked the, old timer, I was like, can you teach me something about law, man? I'm trying to go home. So he looked at me. He said, you the young boy that always stay in and out of the hole. He said, right? He said, this is how my nephew got time barred, being in the hole. And it happened to me, right? I almost got time barred because going back.
What's time barred? Could you break that down for us?
What's time barred?
Being time barred in the courts is not filing a timely habeas corpus or timely post-conviction petition.
For like an appeal or something?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So if there's any type of procedural default, the courts, they play on that. You know what I mean? And a lot of times in a lot of them prisons up there in the state, dudes that go back and forth in a hole, be getting into it with the guards, they sabotage your whole situation.
Yeah, for sure.
And trash all your testimonies, all your legal work and all that. It happened to me.
Oh my God.
It happened to me, but
And I heard you say when you was in there, you was on top of your like the legal work and stuff like that. And I hear that a lot. Like, if you don't know legal stuff, like before you go in, it's like once you go in, people start opening them books and cracking it open because you can't depend on the DA to do the job for you because they just try and close the case. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, so, I mean, like, when you tapped in, like it was like your decision to check on like your the legal work, or did you say like I'm gonna do this myself, or like was somebody in your back like, yo, stay on top of your work, or was you just like, I'm gonna just be on top of my paperwork myself?
Well, that was something that I was compelled to do on my own because you had to look at it, man. At the end of the day, the average dude that go home, 9 times out of 10, man, they ain't looking back unless they got a personal relationship with a few individuals. You know what I mean? So it's like every man for theyself in there. You know what I mean? So you do have individuals that are willing to help individuals that's willing to help themselves. Right? You know, I got tired of paying jailhouse lawyers. You know what I mean? You know?
It's facts.
So what's some advice you give some of the youth listening to this? Because I feel like, you know, you've been through a lot, and a lot of these younger generation, these youth, they be heading to self-destruction and don't even realize it.
I don't even want to cut that up because that's kind of like an in conclusion question. That's a good joint. I want to throw this question out there before you answer that. 36 years is a long time. When did you get to the point where you just stopped counting?
Well, I ain't never stopped counting, man. Right?
Because 36 years, a lot. Yeah. Like I heard people that do like a dub or like 30, they just like they stop counting after like 15. It's just like I'm in here.
Well, I'm saying that's for individuals that lost hope. You know what I mean? Okay. That's just like out here, man. You have a climate where individuals actually instill in their mind that we're living in hopelessness. That's not always the case. If you're not proactive, if you're not consistent with achieving short-term or long-term goals, that's with anything in life. You're going to fail. You're going to become a liability to yourself. So when we talk about, you know, me being in the Lions Den, that includes the DOC, how they is so corrupt, as well as with the judicial system. They corrupt. But their hands have been forced to release a lot of guys. See what I'm saying? Especially the guys that got 30, 40 something years in. I'm talking about commutation cases. It's still cases still sitting on the governor's desk right now. You know, so there is hope, you know, for guys to come home, especially if they're doing what they need to do inside, right? I hated being called a model prisoner. But as I evolved, you know what I mean, I started mentoring guys, started facilitating, you know, violence intervention groups, bunk the violence prevention. That's a liability in itself because they talking about gun control now. We know that at the end of the day, guns don't kill people. People kill guns, people. Yeah. So we talking about the mindset. Now when you fast forward and you talk about the mindset of the youth today in various different parts of, you know, the city. You know what I mean? As far as the mentoring, you know, when I was partaking in the situation with the mayor's office where they called upon 7 or 8 juvenile lifers, along with, you know, guys that structured the Real Street Talk at Greater Ford. You know what I mean? We had a forum, and the youngins, they listen, you know what I mean? But it's one thing to listen, and it's one thing to be attentive and hear the message that's being conveyed as opposed to waiting until it happened and then talk about what you should have did. You had people in your ear. A lot of the youth, you know, and this is not to discredit all youth because I deal with a lot of positive young boys, you know what I mean, that I work with, you know what I mean? But a lot of them young boys is too arrogant. They puffed up with pride. And they had the same mindset I had when I was in prison, thinking that I had to prove myself. You know what I mean? Staying in the hole for fighting
I say that a lot, man. I say pride gets a lot of these people in jail.
It do.
Honestly, like certain people will rather do life than take a little embarrassment of getting their ass whooped on a one-on-one.
At the end of the day, I always listen to my good voice of reason, which was my mom and my grandma. And they just told me just
Shout
continue to have
out
just
the moms and the grandma.
continue to have a strong will and whatever faith you embrace. Be true to yourself. Be true to your Lord. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of the credit and a lot of the praise goes to Allah, man. I think Allah, for me being able to sit before y'all now and to be a humble individual and not that, arrogant individual that, thought he had to prove something to somebody. Right? Character goes a long way.
It do.
For sure.
Personality also goes a long way.
For sure.
So if harm is presented to me, if I'm not critically thinking, I'm a spaz out. Right? But if I choose not to reciprocate a harm with harming Allah's creation, that itself is going to humble me, man. I don't want to kill no man unjustifiably. Let alone bad enough, I did all them years for a homicide I ain't even commit.
It's crazy.
So, life is precious, man. And, every time I, see the news and I see, people getting killed senselessly, first thing I think about was the hadith reported by Abu Hurairah, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, may Allah be pleased with him. He said that Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, said that there will come a time when a man will murder a person and not know why he murdered him. And the person that was murdered won't even know why he was killed. So when you think about the innocent lives that's taken, man, I think, and this was prophesied over 1,440 plus years ago, and it resonates to this day.
So on that, I want to ask you, how do you feel about what's going on in the Middle East? Because I know we've been over there for 20 years in Afghanistan, and there are a lot of Muslims over there.
Exactly.
So, they are brothers and sisters as well, no matter nationality. So how do you feel, just like you're saying, lives are being lost, people are killing people for no reason, and people that are dying don't know why they're dying. So could you speak on that, of how you feel?
First of all, I want to just say, my condolences go out to all the families who lost loved ones in this tragedy. Secondly, I just want to say that these idiots, I want to say something else, but I'm going to censor myself.
Speak your mind.
Right?
Speak your mind.
Good. Come
Speak
on,
your
man.
mind.
It's the real show,
yeah,
right? For sure.
These chumps, man, they the scum of the earth to me, man, because they don't represent true Islam, right? In the Quran, it tells you, do not kill you who believe. Do not kill yourself. So even with the Taliban, all these deviant sects, they're not conforming to the prophetic, sunnah of the Prophet or the Quran. They can care less. So when all these people's getting killed, innocent children, they don't care. They gonna bomb themselves, they gonna kill themselves anyway. But, they gonna have to, answer to that.
Now, I'm not too familiar with it, but what I heard is like something like they're more so doing it for the reward in the afterlife. Now, I don't know
They don't
how
get no
true
reward
it is.
for that, because they went against the legislations of the Quran, Allah's commands, right? Anybody, because there's 73 different sects in Islam, right? You have a whole lot of deviant sects, but those who follow the correct Aqidah and the correct minhaj of Prophet Muhammad and his companions and the 2 generations that followed them, If you are upon that, then you safe. You know what I mean? For the individuals that conform to that nut stuff, you know, they're gonna be punished severely. And in the hereafter, you know, fire, you know, and it's like it's 70 times hotter. It's my belief as a Muslim. I don't want to go nowhere near that.
So I have a question as far as speaking on the worldwide topic. They said the United States is the #1 country or continent that incarcerate their citizens. So speaking of that, we either have been incarcerated ourselves or we know someone that's been incarcerated, and especially Philadelphia. Well, Pennsylvania and especially Philadelphia has a higher rate.
Absolutely.
To the point that a lot of jobs say, don't even let us know if you caught a misdemeanor. Every state don't do that. A lot of jobs in Pennsylvania say, if it's a misdemeanor, it's nothing major, don't even let us know. Because so many of us been locked up. So my question to you, being locked up in 81, so you saw the floodgates when Bill Clinton was the president and put a law in place that he gave more time for crack versus cocaine. And that broke up a lot of households because fathers aren't there to raise their children. My question to you, when you saw these young kings coming in during the 90s under that George Clinton era, did you see a change in the jail as well, or was it the same ethics in the jail?
Well, the narrative is going to always be the same when it comes to DOC because the only thing they understand is that bread. See what I'm saying? And each day, you know what I mean? Inmate, a prisoner is housed. You know, what is it? 150,000?
Overpopulated. Like,
you know,
I mean, that's
when
what
you
is.
speak about Clinton administration in '96, he was the one that signed the bill for the habeas corpus. It was a retroactive thing, but he was the one that started guys getting time barred in the courts, right? When he came with that, when he signed that bill. Also in '96, the current president today, he was responsible for signing the bill that calls mass incarceration.
And are you speaking about Joe Biden?
Joe Biden.
So could you elaborate real quick?
And
What did he sign? What did Joey sign?
He signed that bill in place of Clinton, right? To lock dudes up. Lock them up and throw away the key, right? When they passed that bill, when guys wasn't able to meet the criteria of meeting that deadline, guys was getting time barred. You know what I mean? And this is a lot of dudes are still sitting in prison now, time barred, because of that. The mass incarceration has a lot to do with guys spending years and years inside solitary confinement. You know, they just released Chataway. This man, you know, had 50 years. He did 37 years in the hole.
Do you feel like
He did more time than I did.
That's crazy.
In the hole.
That's crazy.
And they just let him go. He did 50 years.
Sheesh.
You know what I mean?
Do you feel like laws is changing now? Do you feel like they're getting better? Or you feel like
some of the laws are changing. Some of the bills that needs to be in place, the 1942 bill, right, to challenge the parole and probation board, as well as these statutes. All these things needs to be addressed if and once that bill gets signed. As far as the guys is up for commutation, I think, you know, Larry Krasner and, you know, the governor, they giving guys a fair shake that deserve a second chance. You know what I mean? Guys that proven themselves academically, you know, got guys that got college degrees and all that, you know?
Man, so
it's changing. It's changing for changing for the better for some and worse for others. I put it that way. Because it's a win-win situation for them, for the judicial system and the DOC, any way you slice it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So whose fault is it when you get convicted of something and you doing time for it, and then later on down the line, somebody has a specific case, but they win for a reason, which brings you up with like a case so and so versus so and so. Now anybody like that had like that similar case under, now it's like the rules apply for them and they can possibly get out or whatever, right?
Well, it all depends upon effective counseling. Effective counseling, paid lawyers.
So
you know what I mean, don't get no don't get no public defender. If you talking about giving some time back, that ain't gonna happen.
So basically, for the miracle to happen, you gotta have a Johnny Cochran, like you gotta have a lawyer that can make that happen for you.
Not necessarily. If you find the right attorney, that knows his stuff, and you know enough law yourself, and then even if you don't, you can always get with somebody that that do. To do a background check on these dudes. Like people be giving these lawyers they money, and it's like they putting their life right in their hand. You got to do your own homework.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a loophole in every case. It's up to the individual to assert themselves and learn the language.
I feel that way about life in general.
Absolutely.
Like any job that you call, anything, like down to your phone, like it's a technology, it can go wrong.
Right.
You call somebody's job, they're there to, like say you call a doctor, you make an appointment. It's their job to make sure that appointment is good. But it's still a human behind that paperwork. They can get a time wrong, get your name right down wrong, they can forget to call you, some shit like that. Because it's been a many of times where it's the opposite person's fault. You sitting and you waiting, and it's their fault. So I always say, period. When you want something done for sure, do that shit yourself.
So my question to you is, what would you tell the young kings? So I have a close friend of mine that that was like my right hand man for years, and unfortunately, he went out of state and got charged with double homicide. So they gave him a natural life. So what would you tell a lot of young kings out there that may have a natural life? Because a lot of people don't know, life sentence in a lot of states is 25 years. But natural life meaning it's not much you're going to come home on. Like you're going to leave out in a body bag. So what advice would you give young kings out there facing that natural life to keep fighting and keep that will, because you were in that same situation?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it starts with, a strong willpower, a strong will to make some type of change, right? Nothing beats a failure but a try, right? Like I said earlier, there's a lot of loopholes in every case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People have to put the work in, right? I've seen guys sitting on death row, facing chair. They kept rumbling, man, because they surrounded themselves and they affiliated themselves with people on the outside with a strong support base. If you don't have that on the outside, you're going to be suffering like a lot of them brothers that's incarcerated. And, my condolences to the brothers that passed away with the COVID, right? Them administrations, man, them DOCs is letting them boys die like flies, and they don't even care. Medical treatment, you know what I mean?
I seen something online about that. I don't know if y'all seen it. Like some prisoners, actually, it was at the pit. I guess they had phones and stuff, but you seen it?
I posted.
Oh, you posted?
I posted on my story, and the brother, he put in all these complaints, right? All these grievances about the medical. They mistreat them. You know what I mean, with this medical stuff.
They wasn't letting them shower. They wasn't letting them do nothing.
Going to the yard, nothing. Right? And they just recently, about a month and a half ago, started letting them guys get contact visits. Right? What I think need, to give them brothers that's facing that situation, to make them more encouraged, man, and more inspired, and to give them the drive to keep fighting. It has to be somebody out here in their ear too, man. Yeah.
So, question: when you was locked up, right? What's the worst thing you seen that made you be like, "Oh shit, I'm in here for a minute"?
I seen the boy check out, man. Right in my face. He hung himself. You know what I mean? I seen dudes set themselves on fire. You know what I mean? Seen dudes get caught up in homosexual activities. All that stuff goes on in there, man. You know what I mean? And that's not no place for no normal human being, man. When you go on a visit, you gotta bend over and crack your ass cheeks, man. I don't want to be humiliated. I don't even like a man even looking at me. You know what I mean? You know, I kept my bang on me. I went to the shower with boots. I kept my slippers in my bag, but I was ready. It was real.
For sure.
It was real. And some of the toughest niggas got tested.
I was gonna ask you that, like, anybody ever crossed the lines, like, with you, like,
Well, I mean,
street,
me
gay?
being young, you know, they did, and right away, immediately, I handled my business. You know what I mean? You got to make a statement right away. If that's not what you choose to be into, willingly, I don't condone it. Don't bring that shit here, man.
Right.
And,
Right.
you know, older guys, they prey on these young boys, man. You know, you go by the cell, the young old head, he plotting on the young boy cakes. He throw some candy bars on the boy bed under his pillow. That boy ate them candy bars, now he is John now. Shit
Crazy.
get crazy like that, man.
That's
crazy.
But I mean,
that young man should know.
if that's
candy
what
high for him is never good.
Yo, real rap. That's what they mean.
I mean, it's, you know,
He wanted
you hear
that,
the stories.
unfortunately.
Don't touch the candy. Or he probably ain't know. Or did he know?
Rock.
That's the thing, though.
Candy pop out of nowhere in jail.
I'm gonna be all the way real with you. Yeah, that sounds suspect. But to somebody that don't know and say you just see candy on your shit, you probably think your celly look. You ain't thinking if I eat that candy, I owe somebody some ass. You ain't thinking that. I know that. Whatever you thinking.
Everything costs in these streets, bro. Everything. Somebody give you something for free in these streets, just know it's gonna cost you.
I mean, especially
Everything.
somebody who ain't never been booked, don't know the jail culture.
Right.
You might think this my man. He
Yeah,
looking out,
like,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
You might
that's
be
what I'm
setting
saying,
yourself up for something. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like, and crazy thing. That's probably what he thought. He like, oh, candy on it. Oh, I'm gonna eat this candy.
Oh yeah, he was candy later on
How
that
that,
night.
that shit crazy. How that shit can't like, yo, you ate that candy, and the nigga couldn't just pay a candy bar back.
You know, being in that type of
Oh,
situation.
I ain't know.
As
Hold
a
on, let me give you.
man, I mean, as a man, being in that type of situation, I ain't gonna let nobody even play me like that. Play with me like that. You know what I mean? You know, but
Candy
you got
bar.
dudes that's into that. That's what they into. You know what I mean? In the jail, no.
So you take it.
Yeah,
You
I
take
know
it.
who's who.
Anybody who try to do you a favor in jail is like, no.
I don't. That was one of the things my pop told me, man.
So he put you right on.
You don't get into no barn.
He put you right
None of
on.
that. Yeah, you don't.
So he put you right
know what I
on,
mean?
huh?
You don't-
No favors.
But yeah, then I had homies, you know what I mean, that I grew up with, you know what I mean. But I listened to my pop, man, because you know my pop had my best interests. You know what I mean, and I ain't had to worry about none of that stuff, man.
Did you ever had to beat someone up for your pop while you was booked with him? Like he like, son, man, beat
my
boy the
pop
fuck
was-
up for me.
My pop was well respected. You know what I mean? He ain't had, you
Yeah, so
know,
he ain't have to go through
he
that.
didn't have them problems. See, one thing about upstate, man, with a lot of them elders that been down 30, 40, 50 years, they got a low tolerance for the nonsense. You know what I mean? So, you know the ones that be on some turkey time versus the ones that's really trying to, you know what I mean, introduce you to something conducive.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'd rather, you know, conversate with an old timer that's going to introduce me to a book. You know what I mean? Whether, you know, rather me get caught up into something, man.
Even
It's
that
gonna
too,
cause
though.
me to get another case.
I heard stories where dudes in there trying to get, you know, recruit certain inmates on a religion type time, and they really be on some other type time.
Well, that's
to will
typical,
them in.
right?
That's crazy.
And you have that, and that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous, especially in Islam.
Right.
That's dangerous, and you know, no one knows no one's intentions but Allah. But at the same time, we can clearly see that this individual is perpetrating. You know what I mean? You know, I just think that they shouldn't use that as a platform for protection.
So, question on another note, totally different. You know, there's like a music podcast and stuff. Who's hot, who's not. Who was you listening to back then?
Back then, oh man,
who was
81, Eric B, Rakim.
Eric.
Right? I'm, you know, I was, you know, on them balls, man. Run DMC.
Right.